So with that, we'll get into the PPs again. It's race 10, 4:52 Eastern time. Papilio comes into this race off of, what I think is a couple of pretty bad luck performances really all year. I think last year she was so consistent. She was at this really high level. She won a grade 2, hit the board in a grade 1. We gave her a break. To start out the year, I thought she ran well at Gulfstream without winning. And then at Churchill, I thought she was really unlucky. I think Castellano, basically, she was widest entering the stretch, and he somehow still got caught with horses coming up to his outside, and he completely had to check, and we still got beat a length. I think had he just floated her to the outside, she probably would have won. And then we went to Monmouth where they completely walked the dog on the front end and went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 all the way around. She had no shot in that race. And then we came back at Kentucky Downs on a turf course that, to put it mildly, just was going to be impossible with our closing style. It played heavily to front runners the entire course of the meet. Maybe the last day or so, it was a little bit fairer after they got some rain, but it can get like that when it doesn't rain much. It can be very speed favoring. So we're coming into this race, I think probably with a disappointing year, really more to bad luck. I don't think she's had too many just completely horrible performances, but it just reiterates the point. We've talked about it some with Alana Queen. We've talked about it with Lottery. Those of you guys that have been a medallion for long enough, we've had other deep closers. And when you have a horse that comes from that far off the pace, you're just always at the mercy of the trip, and you need racing luck. And unfortunately, Papilio just hasn't gotten much racing luck this year. So fingers crossed. There does look like there's a little bit of speed in this race, which we'll get into next. So the first horse is Tufani. This is not one that has tons of speed. She's coming in here off of a win at Colonial, but her best race isn't going to be good enough. She's going to have to take a step forward in here if she wants to factor. Spirit and Glory. She's coming in off of her career worst performance that was at Kentucky Downs, which is again a unique turf course. I would note it's also one of the races where she didn't get to the front. Her last 3 performances were all pretty good. They're all low 90 buyers, which would be good enough to be right there in this race. But all those races have come when she's up on the pace. So I would expect her to be forward, especially given the fact she's drawn inside of the other likely speed. Edict. This horse is a complete wild card. She's a multiple Group 1 winner in South America. I think typically the way I always describe South American horses, it's one of the reasons we don't buy South American horses is one, they need a significant amount of time to acclimate. So this horse, his last start was December of last year. In South America, they need a long time to acclimate, and it's very hard to get a read on the level of form. Sometimes you get horses from South America, they win grade 1s, and they're beating really good horses, and they come up here and they're very competitive. Sometimes they're beating these horses in South America in grade 1s, and they come up here and they're just not very good. Maybe the horses in South America that year weren't very good. So this feels like a very realistic spot to get started. It's a listed stake, although there are plenty of, I think there are at least 3 graded stakes winners in this field. But a complete wild card. I think the betting will be really interesting. If the horse gets heavily bet, I would expect a good performance. If it kind of floats up off the morning line, could need a start. Child of the Moon is next. This horse came over the summer of 23, didn't run for a year, has run 2 good races back, both of those from off the pace, so she has a similar running style to what Papilio does. She's on an upward trajectory, but going to probably continue to have to take a step forward. Three Priests is interesting. She's also entered in a grade 3 at Keeneland. It sounds like they're going to run there as opposed to New York. So I think she's probably a likely scratch. But if she gets in, she is interesting. She's cutting back in distance from 1 mile and 5/16 to 1 mile and 1/8. And based on her European form, I would say she probably wants further. The race at Keeneland's 1.5 miles, and that feels like a more logical spot than this. Prerequisite is next. Prerequisite made her first start back off a long layoff, an impressive win. I think overall, I don't think it was the toughest allowance race ever. She did win well. She's got good speed. She's going to have a good tactical advantage. She tried to use that tactical advantage last year in the Belmont Oaks where they absolutely crawled the whole way around. And we just missed her in that race. I think she's a similar level to Papilio. She has a tactical advantage. I think hopefully one of the horses to the inside can go and create more of pace for us to run at. We've kind of covered all of Papilio's races. The one race we didn't cover was her allowance win at Churchill, where I thought she set a really good trip, showed she could be a little bit closer to the pace. Hopefully she shows that same style here at Belmont at the Big A. Again, her best race is definitely good enough. She just needs a little bit of racing luck. I think the switch to Dylan Davis is probably a pretty positive move. He's ridden a bunch for Cassie this year. He's winning 21% at the meet, and he's just had an excellent last 5 months. So excited to get Dylan on relative to what else is in New York. The kind of the intriguing horse to me is 30 Thou Kelvin. If you look back, she gets an aggressive speed rider and Kendrick Carmouche. If you look back to these 3 races here, which are really 4 races, including a win in the Virginia Oaks, she was on the lead, and then right there, she did win an allowance at Saratoga coming from off the pace, but last time when they stretched her out, it didn't work out. So I think I could see a scenario from the outside where they try to be a little bit aggressive with this horse. And that's what we would like to see to help Papilio is this horse to be aggressively ridden to challenge prerequisite. What we don't want is the 2 to take back, prerequisite to get completely loose, this horse to take back. I think that hurts our chances. So again, I think Papilio, when I saw her at Kentucky Downs, she looked a lot better than she did at the tail end of last season, just physically. But she just needs some racing luck and a clear run, and fingers crossed we can get that on Saturday. So best of luck with Papilio on Saturday.